and the church was on top of the male dungeon. So during the slave trade, whilst holding the Africans down, the same British worshiped or practiced Christianity on top of the Africans.
We left Accra for Cape Coast. And yes, it was a beautiful journey with lots of beautiful experiences. Because of my curiosity, my eyes were everywhere looking as we drive by markets, towns, and cities. And soon we arrived in the Central Region. Cape Coast is under the Central Region. As of 2020, there are 16 regions which are further divided for administrative purposes. And these were further divided into 260 local government, municipal, and district assemblies, which is also known as MMDAs. And as we drive by, then there is this octopus. I ate it for the first time. Welcome to Cape Coast and welcome to Cape Coast Castle, a place steeped in history, tragedy, and resilience. Join us as we journey to explore the depth of this iconic landmark, delving into its tourist parts and uncovering the untold tales within its beautiful walls. Welcome to Cape Coast Castle. Built in the 17th century by the European colonial power, Cape Coast Castle stands as the haunting reminder of the transatlantic slave trade. Originally constructed by the Portuguese in 1653 and then to the Greeks, Dutch, and then fell into the hands of the British, who used it as a key hub for the transportation of enslaved Africans to the Americans. Within these walls is the horror of humanity's darkest chapter. At the entrance of the castle, you see the pictures of great leaders who fought for the liberation of Africa, men like Kwame Nkrumah, Thabo Mbeki, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and other great leaders who fought for the liberation of Africa. Next is the directional map of Cape Coast Castle, which shows you the map and the site of the scene which thousands of slaves were moved to Europe for slavery. Our tour begins with the entrance into the male dungeon, where the male slaves were kept before they were taken or sent to America, the Caribbean, to farm in their plantations.
Built on this land was the Swedish. The Swedish were here around 1654, and when they came, they built a small fort. They were taking gold and Africans away, but the fort in the land changed hands between three other European countries. In 1658, the Danes captured the fort of the Swedish. The Danes were here for 3 years. 1661, the Dutch also came. They drove the Danes away and took control of the same fort. 4 years after the Dutch came, around 1665, the British fought the Dutch, defeated them here, and the British were the ones who developed the slave castle. So everything you see here is British built. And it took them more than 100 years to develop the castle into how it is now. And mind you, they didn't use Africans to build up the structure. For close to 200 years, many Africans were taken from here to the British colonies in the Americas and the Caribbean. And the Africans taken through the slave castle, there were many of them captured within present-day Ghana. But in those days, there were Africans captured in neighboring countries, Togo, Burkina Faso, Mali, and brought here. Many of these Africans were prisoners of the intertribal wars that happened. There were also people kidnapped randomly from their homes by both the Europeans and African slave raiders. And one thing, wherever the Africans were captured, they were marched on foot. They walked here. So you can imagine walking from Malta to this place. So there were many Africans who died being brought to the castle. And those who survived the walk, they were brought here by the middlemen and the slave raiders. These middlemen and slave raiders auctioned the Africans. They were exchanging the Africans for European goods. The British, the castle, used the guns, gunpowder, tobacco to barter or to exchange. And after getting the Africans, the British had them branded. They had branding irons with their company's names or emblems carved out at the tops, put into fire. The branding on the arms or the backs of the Africans for easy identification. From there, they will separate them. Now, this dungeon designed to hold as many as 1,000 men. Wow. From this chamber all the way down there, 1,000 men. And they had a separate place where they kept the women we go into. Now, the male dungeon divided into 5 chambers. Please let's walk into the first chamber here. We are in the first chamber. One in each chamber could hold as many as 200. 200 men could be in this space. There was no electricity in those days. The 3 vents, that was a source of light and ventilation. There were these small wooden buckets placed at the corners of the chamber for the men here to defecate in them. But the buckets were not enough. So many times the toilet urine down on the floor. And they stayed in the waste. On the floor there's a small drain or gutter. It was created for the urine to run through all the way into the sea. The Africans, they were fed twice a day. They ate in the morning and evening. The food was put in the palms. And the British kept the Africans in here in these conditions for 2 weeks to sometimes as long as 3 months, waiting for the slave ships to come. Many Africans died in the dungeons. When one dies in here, the body taken out and thrown into the sea. There were Christian missionaries in the slave castle, missionaries who came from England to preach Christianity in the neighboring towns and kingdoms. And when they came, they did build a church. So there was an English or Anglican church in the slave castle. And the church was on top of the male dungeon. So during the slave trade, whilst holding the Africans down here, the same British worshipped or practiced Christianity on top of the Africans. When we continue out, I will show you where they had the church. So this is how dark the place is without electricity. So let's continue. But just a second, before we continue, let me just point. Take a look at this. You can see the bricks. You can see the floor clearly built with bent bricks. Okay, let's continue. I'll make reference to this. Sometimes they'll have a soldier there with a lamp or a torch just to watch or observe the men held down here. Now the floor here, we don't see the bricks. What we are standing on, it looks like compressed soil. That's how it was in that first chamber. In the 1970s, a group of archaeologists came to the castle to do the waste. When they moved into that first chamber, they excavated the floor to reveal the bricks. They examined what they had excavated. The conclusion, it was decomposed human waste. So the Africans held the dungeons with time, the feces, the food waste, it all piled up, covering the bricks, and then decayed or hardened into what they had excavated. They did not touch the other chambers. So all what we are currently standing on, it is all the decomposed feces and food waste of the enslaved Africans held in here. So should we do an excavation, we'll be seeing bricks, just like the first chamber. Alright, so the last chamber, again 200 men were kept in this space during the slave trade. Now behind this wall, behind this, is an underground tunnel. The British built an underground tunnel to connect this chamber, the sea, about 70 meters long. And they were using the tunnel as a passage. So during the slave trade, when the slave ships come to the beach, the men held in the dungeon, they were not moved or taken out through the main door of the ships. They were moved or taken through the underground tunnel in chains. They are led by soldiers. They walk all the way to the beach. At the beach, they are forced into boats. The boats then take them to the ships on the sea before they are taken to the Americas and the Caribbean, never to return home to their motherland, Africa. Around 1833, the British in the castle closed the entrance to the tunnel. They closed it supposedly to symbolize the end of slavery in their colonies. We cannot see how big or deep the tunnel is from here, but when we continue out, I'll show you parts of the underground tunnel. And this right here, it is a traditional shrine, a shrine that belongs to the local people in the town. The local people who practice the indigenous African religion, they do come to practice. There's a priest in charge, but he's not here. But the shrine, it was built long after the slave trade. So during the slave trade, this was not here. One will ask, why then is a shrine here? It is here because of its historical connection to the very land on which the slave castle is built. So the history of the town is that long before these Europeans came, the ancestors, the Africans in the town, had the shrine on the land. The land was a sacred ground for the local. But when the land was occupied, the Europeans prevented the Africans in the town from having access. The British, they were in control of this slave castle until just about 67 years ago, 1957, when we declared our independence. So after independence, when the British officially left our land, the locals wanted a shrine back on this very land. But for that to happen, the government at that time would have had to demolish the whole castle. But there was a compromise. The government rather gave the space for the local people to build the shrine. So it is here because of its historical connection to the land.
And what do they do in the league?
These are brought by visitors, mostly our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, the direct descendants of the enslaved Africa, the Jamaican, the African American. When they visit, they bring these here to pay homage to the ancestors, those who died and those who survived the false beginning across the Atlantic.
Yeah, of return.
Any questions? The captives. All right. They were eating in the dungeons or out at the courtyard, depending on the numbers. When the numbers are high, they are moved out to the courtyard. They were in chained together. They had to open their palms. The servants walk among them with a ladle. The servant scoops a bit of the food into your palm. It will not be hard to burn the palms. So something small to keep them alive. But if the numbers are low, such that the servants can easily walk among them, then the food is brought in. But the servant come in with soldiers, armed soldiers, supervised. Yeah. When I talk about the servant, they were using some of the captives to cook and to feed the others. All right.
Sorry, what's the name of the shrine again?
Nana Taber.
Okay.
Nana Taber.
Chief Tabir.
All right. The corner there is an extension of the church. There is no more.